I'm one of the co-artistic directors of this edition of the Contemporary Art Biennale. I'll just use this. Again, good evening, everyone. My name's Sabi Ahmed. I'm one of the co-artistic directors of the Diriyah Contemporary Art Biennale this edition. It's a third edition. It's titled Fil Hilwa Tirhal in Interludes and Transitions. And we've had the wonderful privilege of working with some extraordinary artists who are thinkers, philosophers, world makers, gamers, all kinds of people, amateur astronomers, some sitting amongst us today. We have been preparing for this closing program for the Biennale, and it comes obviously with sentiments of bitter sweetness. The closing program includes various kinds of events happening in the Jacks district as well as in the Biennale, in some of the artworks, which is what we're going to see after this talk. Just to quickly jump in on today's talk, this evening, it's with the Raqs Media Collective. My own relationship goes back a long way with the Raqs Media Collective. When I was a student, I was organizing their library, and I had to color code books. And you realize how many interdisciplinary books that they have, in which color coding just goes adding more colors to the same book. And then it's impossible to categorize them after a point, and you realize, why am I doing this? They should just be stacked on different days in different places, depending on what kind of projects are developing. And that kind of changes your relationship with archives, that things do not belong to one category. They belong to many, and they keep whirling, swirling, dancing, which is kind of what Raqs Media Collective's name really comes from. It comes from Raqs, a word in Urdu, Arabic, English, Persian, which is a state of dancing, whirling, coming from whirling dervishes, but also the state you enter when you're in a state of kinetic contemplation is what they describe. Raqs Media Collective are artists, curators, thinkers, and they produce works that span multimedia installations, films, lecture performances, and publications. Their work extends into many fields, as I was mentioning, even about their library, and examines the question of the everyday alongside philosophical and historical inquiries into the universe. Something that we were also touching in our biennales with how different artists produce different universes. Unraveling structures of time and language is what Raqs do, and they probe that by shifting states of contemporary life and the boundaries of perception. I've always considered Raqs to be time junkies. They're obsessed with time, and they came riffing off time, and we might hear some of it today. The collective's exploration of transformation in their process and subjects is reflected in their name, as I mentioned, and they co-founded Sarai, a program of interdisciplinary research at Delhi's Center for the Study of Developing Societies, CSDS, in 2001. They curated the 7th Yokohama Triennale in 2020 during COVID, and my relationship also goes back to the 11th Shanghai Biennale that was 10 years ago in 2016 in Shanghai, called Why Not Ask Again? And with that, I'm going to invite Jibesh Bakchi, one of the members of the Raqs Media Collective. There are 3. We have only one of the 3 atomic particles. And let's wait to hear from Jibesh of what he has to say. Thank you, Jibesh.
Thanks, Sabi. After introduction, it's very difficult to start. So we'll have the next slide. I had to say I like this thing of artist collective because we were discussing this Raqs Media Collective. The word media confuses a lot of people every time. So a lot of people want to just call it Raqs Collective. And now some of our friends were saying it looks like a dance collective. So it is best to have media to keep it away. So, but now in Diriyah they have notified it as artist collective. So thank you. So, if you give the first slide, Natalia. So what happened was that Sabi asked me, wrote a mail to all of us saying that I want you to come for the closing ceremony, the period, it will be nice. And I had not seen the exhibition because I was here doing the install, and then I left and installed. The lights are on, the floodlights. So you can't really see anything with those lights. So I said, okay, I will come. But he said that I have given a title, and he put a question mark, something rare to lose. The work is called Something Rare to Lose. He put a question mark. Now a curator, after 1 year, puts a question mark to your artwork. You realize that there is some degree of confusion there. So I said, okay. So we were discussing in the studio. I said, okay, let's at least address it. to show that this is not something that we have spun today. There may be a longer route to which we have come to this work. So this talk is not about the work. It is about the question mark of the work. It is to where did we come into this work? You have all seen the work, so I don't need to go into it. So before I go into the next slide and the series of works or series of detours, I'll just to say that two kind of principles that I would like to keep in view is that this work and many of our work is based on certain kind of reading of the world. So broadly, it is said that we affect the world and we are affected by it. That mostly many philosophical, metaphysical formulations would accept it. That we affect the world, but we are affected by it. And the relationship is not one of very known. It is a very tense relationship between being affected and being affected. And the other second part of it is that most of the time, that which affects us, that which makes us move in the world in all directions and trajectories are invisible and also unintelligible. So in the sense that we know we are affected, we know we are moved by things, but there is a degree of unintelligibility and invisibility to it, and that is why a lot of inquiries and investigations of different ways, artist does, philosopher does, writers do, scientists do, in their different domain. So this is a work that we wanted to outline two things. One is the media part. This is one of the first kind of work we did in digital, which is the arrival of internet in our lives in a big way. This work is not available anymore because it's a CD-ROM work. It is you put a CD and then it starts it, and then it's a hyperlinked work. This is more, but if you can easily guess it, it's 19th century. It's where the train engine had come in. So the work was using the word engine because that's how internet was being talked about. It had a language of engine. So you click the engine and you enter a Global Village Health Manual, which is actually a manual, it is a primer that we found in 19th century after the coming of print. So there is two advent, the print and the engine, the railways. And they both bring in circulation a new language of health, a new language of how to read the body and how to be with the body. And this was something that we started in 2000, was to basically look at that specific moment in 2000, how the language of the body was being talked in the whole ecosphere. That was the internet then. It was a very slow internet with modem, so it took a different way of running it. Some of you may not even know that it existed. Some of my students say that you are lying when I say that it was 1 MB movement, 1 MB connection byte. So this is something that I'm just stationing it in the sense that this inquiry into the ecology and economy of health is something that has stayed with us. But this is the time when we are young, we are full of enthusiasm. We have met some accidents of friends and all, but we have not really seen the body taking different routes in the world, whether illness, whether disability, all kinds of ways which body appear. So this, you can say, is a kind of prehistory to our own bodies. Next slide. So now I'll take you to two questions like we had. This is what you see this camera going close to is a meteorite, which we rented or hired or was gifted to show in an install, which was called, this install is, and this, we called it the meteorite, the clearing, which was there and lay bleeding. So this is a meteorite which fell on this region in Luleå in Sweden. It was about 1 million years earlier, and it contains iron. And iron in Earth comes from meteorites having from distant stars. So this meteorite is actually older than Earth. It reaches Earth, and it is a very heavy meteorite. It has a name. I could read the name, but I think it is a very long name. But it's you have to take for it. It's 1 million years old. And it landed million years old, but it is actually 3 billion years old meteorite. So it is older than Earth in terms of, so it is one of the oldest objects. But this, what you see here is one of the most purest form of iron found in Luleå. Luleå is in the top, above Arctic zone in Sweden. We were asked to investigate, do some research and think of a way of, so this is a iron, which is a pure iron, but a very high concentrated iron in Kiruna. And one of the most interesting part of Sweden was that this iron mining was very important part of this whole landscape. And now this iron mining has sunk the landscape. But why am I showing it is this, that this is also in a, next slide, this is also in a, Natalia, next slide. This is also in a cave. It's a kind of a, inside the mountain, it's a cave. So we discovered this cave because it was a, now we are in this zone where we talk about wars. So this was the Cold War. Sweden had an underground preparatory telecommunication system that they had inside the cave. So this was decommissioned in 1984. So, but for 30 years, people were stationed there with communication system to respond if there is a, if at all there will be a nuclear attack, because Sweden was this kind of border area. But now it is an interrupted world. So with fungus, with mushrooms, with all kinds of other material. And so what we did was we made a walk through the cave. Next slide. And the walk through the cave allowed us to move into some other forms of historical archive that this landscape provided in relationship to the question of blood. Why? Because iron in our blood comes from the stars. Iron, we are in that way, the work was called Blood of Stars, because in that way we are kind of emitting stars on a daily basis. When hemoglobin goes up and down, you can say that your star levels are not doing well, rather than just your iron levels are not doing well. So that would be the way. So that this, so like this video is about some kind of a music video we found, which was shot in 1982, which was about being always under a threat. But it is in the same landscape. It is not in the next. So what we discovered while researching Luleå, that the reindeer, which is very important part of a Sami landscape, and reindeer actually do not obey national borders. Reindeer do not obey, and the Sami landscape is not a national landscape. But we found that the reindeer, this reindeer is from an archive, which it just keeps on blinking, and is waiting for a conversation. The reindeer lost its way in large part of this landscape because reindeers walks through the landscape and they needed to walk through different flowing rivers. And since this landscape has been massively dammed, the rivers have turned into lakes. So what we realized was that the reindeer had to discover a new landscape. And this discovery of the new landscape, as you lose your route, became for us an important way to see this cave. This cave is also a lost landscape, but it does hint us to what to look ahead. Next slide. So it is just I wanted to, because we like this one, because because when we first went there, it was this much snow. So when again went, so we discovered in the up snow line, there was a crashed plane, as if the sediment of the landscape hides other stories of other ways in which this landscape has been kind of worked on, extracted, played, truant to very different designs. Next one. Okay, so now that was the story of landscape, iron, blood. So we know that we started in the 19th century blood. And we know that 19th century, blood and iron policy, Bismarck, the whole of nationalism is blood and iron policy, which we have not yet left behind, but nobody really speaks that language, though in India they've started again. So this is, more salt in your tears is the Baltic Sea. Huh? So while we are researching Baltic Sea, we realized that our tears is a threshold. If our salt in the Baltic Sea rises to our tear level, we are in trouble, because there will be a huge ecological shift. And that is a sign that things may go wrong. Many of the fishes, many of the marine life, many of the life that we think as part of our living may go. So this work was basically a work that wanted to mark a line in the ocean called the threshold line, that you preserve your tears. You keep on thinking your tears, because tears has a relationship to the salinity, and the salinity has a relationship to certain ecologies. So in a way, if your stars, your blood star levels are jumping, in your tears something else is jumping, the salinity is jumping, and that has a consequence for the larger way in which our equilibriums can be breached and have to be redone. So now this is a cup that we reconstituted. It was one cup found in a shipwreck, in 2,000-year-old shipwreck called Antithekera shipwreck in the Greece, near a little far away from Athens. One of the world's most perplexing shipwreck, because it had the famous, they call it the pre-computer machinery, Antithekera machinery, which was a counting machine, which has no replica of its time, and nobody has been to decode it. That's why it's a very well-known shipwreck. So this cup was called, it was a broken cup called Pamphilos. Pamphilos is, as we would know, friend of all people. Pam is like a university in Greece is called Pam Epistemo. So across, friend, all. So we need to understand that sometimes across episteme is what a university is not in an episteme. So Pamphilos, but allowed us, why? So this idea that a friend of all was there in a shipwreck, in a wine cup, 2,000 years old. We think it's a wine cup. It could be simple water, it could be thirst, or it could be intoxication. But the idea that Pamphilos is what is always at stake, in a sense that to become friend of all in your act in the world is always at stake. It is something that you cherish, you want to. This dialogue with Shuno was very interesting. It was continuous return to the idea of co-inhabitation with others. Next. So while we are looking for the shipwreck, we said, okay, let's also look for new shipwrecks. There may be because you keep on hearing about shipwrecks. Nowadays, there's ship-wrecked wreck, people are wrecked into the ship, into the ocean. So now we found a way to enter the. We are not doing the deep ship. Don't get fooled by that, because it was a serious matter. We can't even do 1 meter. But it was a word that we find in the deep ocean, a word which is called forgetting of air, which is discovered by the divers. 3 divers goes there, and trying to find a shipwreck, they find a word written in the landscape, deep inside the ship, in the ocean bed, and which says forgetting of air. Now, forgetting of air is a kind of a caution, because it is a philosophical and famous feminist philosopher, Lucy argues it, that we have made a fundamental mistake in forgetting the very ground in which we breathe the world. So this is again where the breath takes over. And it's what is interesting, finding it deep sea, it becomes interesting because there is a caution that is lost to ourselves. It felt like we find something in deep sea as a caution in the wreckage, amidst the wreckage, or something that is so fundamental, has to be again discovered, found. So now we come to breath. So we did blood, we moved around to salinity of your tears, breath. But why am I saying these are constituent of the work? As I'm told yesterday, very, very movingly by so many mediators. So I was trying to work out today how to keep it alive to its context. Next one. Okay, so now this red line, we draw every year a red line, which is the line of we give it a line, red line. So this is 2020 we started it. So this is the Mr. Chicken, doing very well, and holding human tears to the lips, but doing very well because there are 3 times more chicken than human beings, 4 times now actually. There are 40 billion chickens. They're doing really well, along with goats, camel, lamb. They're doing pretty well. But upstairs, they're not doing very well. They're extinct. The red line is the year. So that's the mythological animal. Most of the mythological animals are slowly, their health is bad. They're dying out pretty badly. So that is the left. And then there is this ant, the famous ants. These are, they have a name. I can read the name. Somewhere I have it. I will tell you a little later. So they have the ants, then the bats, and then frog, the great poison frog. And in the middle, there is some other. So we do this line to figure out a series of extinctions that are part of our everyday life. And the extinctions, they have tears around it. So, and we'll come to the tears. But the extinction is almost, has a direct multiplication to the abundance of certain species, like Mr. Chicken. The chicken is doing very well as a species. One of the best species health is chicken. Do not feel bad when you eat a chicken. As a species, they're doing brilliantly. The individual sacrifices themselves quickly for the species. So this is one thing that we have learned from the chicken. So this is that red line which keeps on. This is the threshold line created by us. Created in our own turmoil, we are creating a shifting red line. So this is 2020, the line is 2020, the work we started in 2021. Next one. So now we have this, we have to read our eyes continuously in the airport, your photograph, the biometric logic is there. So, and we, while researching, and this research is trying to figure out, the eye has one of the most moist part of ourself, and it is, eye has to be moist. To keep that, drying of the eye is a very catastrophic condition. But for the measurement of the eye, moistness is not good. So when you are crying or when you are very emotional, your biometric readings are somewhere a little blurry. So the measurement logic and the very foundation by which the eye has to be lived as a moist way in which we negotiate the world is crucial. So that moistness is what brings tears, and that is very foundational. And human beings are one of the most rare species. It is still elephant, they say, who can have joy and mourning, sadness in a collective way through the idea of the tears. And tears can signify, in a very fundamental way, our relationship to each other, to empathy, to nature, to everyone. So in that way, it's very fundamental to the constitution of what we are. Next. Is 42 minutes? No, it's a background. Okay. So while researching, this is the work that we did, First World War. We landed up with a historical archive, again, which was very strangely dreamlike about the First World War soldiers from India. Now, India had one of the biggest contingent in the First World War, and there were soldiers were everywhere. If you give the next slide, if you are everywhere, you will see the Indian soldiers were, like the Battle of Kut is all Indian soldiers. But the soldiers, the amount of soldiers was also the same amount of people who were there to take care of the soldiers, to take care of the injured, to take care of the animals. They were called followers. So if there were 50,000 soldiers, there were 50,000 followers. And those followers are very unnamed. So we found in this archive the 3 followers entertaining the soldiers. And they were entertaining almost like an haunted, widowed, in India with a widow, where they come from, widow would wear a white dress. So they're performing some kind of back home dance for the soldiers of certain landscape of pleasure and loss. It's because it's a dance. It's very clearly a dance, and it's It's a dance that they're performing in this kind of masquerade, a masquerade which is of kind of mourning and a kind of loss. But it's a dance of mourning. We'll come back to it later. So this is the three shadow. These are the three shadows we found from the historical archive. Next. And so we had blood, so one of the things of the First World War we found, fascinatingly, it was all about nerves. Our historical archive documents keeps on talking about nerves. And from the language of blood and iron had shifted to nerves, and it's a big shift. And it is also the first time the recognition that there are nervous illness. And that is the time when neurons are being discovered. So, and the whole language of the war was around nerve. So you lose your nerve. They lost their nerve. Your nerve is not strong. It's no longer blood. And this relationship between the loss of nerve and the ability of bravery was connected. So one was fascinating was PTSD was the PTSD conditions were coming to the doctors. They would never recognize it. Why? It was very fascinating records. The soldiers who were coming with PTSD did not have inner life or mental life. So they cannot have PTSD. So officers can have PTSD. But the nerve injuries where people coming were basically soldiers. So it took a long time. It took about 20 years to recognize that what they were seeing was PTSD. And there are some fascinating record of doctors saying that the patient shows great sign of poetry. And that is a sign of not illness, but of delirium. So in a sense that a lot of PTSD patients were writing a lot of, and there is some beautiful poetry by soldiers, soldiers in their delirium. So this is the shift that the 20th century records between, from the blood we move to tears, not tears, nerves. So because nerves, the neurological condition becomes part of our discourse. This is we start accepting that we will talk ourselves through the language of neurology. Next. Okay, now I go a little back. So this is in the court of Jahangir, 17th century. Jahangir has a very dear friend, Inayat Khan. Inayat Khan is dying because he was an opium addict. Jahangir loved Inayat Khan. You can Google yours, right? Dying Inayat Khan, you will have an incredibly beautiful Mughal miniature done by Baichand. Now, Jahangir wanted to observe the death of Inayat Khan because it is his friend dying. And the friend gets like the whole skeleton is visible of the friend. But he's surrounded by cushions, surrounded by the incredible beauty of the Jahangir's court. But Jahangir is observing a death. And the best of the miniaturists are drawing the death. And it is a love affair with death, a death that one has to be observed and one has to be recorded for posterity. So we could only observe, and now this time we can't observe dying Inayat Khan, but we can keep on observing dying Inayat Khan, which is that he changes color and composition, and maybe Inayat Khan is seeing something else. He's not seeing his own death, maybe he's seeing other visions of the world. So this work is about the dying Inayat Khan's own vision of the world, attempt at it. It's very difficult. We were less, this is 10 years before this work. So we were less understanding of what it means to engage with this form of just observing someone losing their life or on the path of losing their life. But it is there in the historical records, in the historical archive of art. It is there. So next. Okay, now. So that looking at Inayat Khan, land up, you keep on looking, you look at water, you look at so we found some water in the asteroid belt. It was very much there. So if we lose groundwater, we may plant ourselves in asteroid belts to water. And because we were looking very carefully, we even found a stepwell inside the asteroid belt because there was some imagination of. So this is very interesting. There are water floating in the cosmic world in different forms, in crystal forms. And this is not a good rendition because this is actually AR work. this is, the water floats in the room everywhere, and we are moving through it. But we found the stepwell inside. Stepwell is an incredible water reservoir developed fascinatingly all over India, but fantastically in a state called Rajasthan, which is now in complete forgotten memory. It is like, it is only in the asteroid belt, while looking for the thirsty people, looking at water, finds an ecology of thirst, which is the stepwell. So next. Okay. So now, see, one of the most incredible problem of thinking about life is you have to think about death, because one inevitability that makes life precious. And the problem with death is that there is very little resource we have to actually think it through. Think, what does it mean to lose someone? What does it mean to actually face death? Huh? So this is one painting that is there in the Victoria Albert Museum. This is a small painting by fascinating artist Gagendranath Tagore. Is the I think the nephew of Rabindranath. Watercolor, where it is a 19th century, early 20th century Bengal, huge factories, jute factories primarily, and there is a procession of people coming out of the factory of a death, of some death that has happened in the factory. But what is fascinating is that if we observe at the image, they are dancing. They are dancing. So the death has happened inside the factory, and they are mourning by a dance. So the body is remembering in a completely different way the dance. So one of the things that before this work we had made, this is just, next slide, we made a work called When the Air Turned Thick. This is now on in a show in New York. But what we were trying to think is that when the air turned thick, means our air has turned thick. The intensity, the particulate matter in the air, especially in these regions, are very thick. So we were looking what would mean to have this image now. So it is the image that we are reading in the realm of the things turning thicker, which people call climate change, people call pollution. There are many names to it. But what it means? So what does it mean to have an early 20th century dance on a funeral, refracted now, where the embers are still reaching us, and the air is thick, that it does not easily hold that landscape. That landscape is almost vanished. So this is a work that we were trying to work out a certain procession. And there are a few works now we have been doing on this procession. The bestiary was one of it, but a different kind of procession. This one, where the procession, we revisit earlier processions. And we revisit in terms of different ways in which we could have to recollect it, recollect back into our narration, into ourselves. There are works which this has a very complicated way of narrating the procession. But the idea is that we have to rethink the procession back into ourselves, not as that it happened then, but because it is at all time happening in its own logic, and it keeps on appearing as a happening. So this is a funeral that we tried to work. This is about a 15-20 minutes video. I just wanted to show this, to touch it, that this idea that how to address a funeral is not necessary in the script. We have to go back to different ways in which we have to address it. Next. Okay, now this is a very simple, now time is almost up. So this is the tear. We did a microscopic scan of tear, and one of the most interesting part of tear is that it almost looks like a landscape. This is a it's very one speck of a tear, and it has the video is not working. Can you press No, not this one, the back. That video should work. It's coming? Okay. Anyway, that's a tier that falls from top to bottom. So, and that tier is one small tier that we have been trying to understand. And that tier is a highly compressed crystal of water, which has an incredible density and an incredible tapestry to it. So I don't know why it's not working. It's a very nice tier. It falls from top to bottom, and top to bottom, and it takes time. So the work is that you see one tier fall from top to bottom, and you give it time. The time is basically to know that that's very fundamental constituent of yours is something that keeps you alert to the logic of how we are in the world, how we actually affect and affected by the world. So that's broadly what I wanted to bring to your attention in relationship to the work that is here, which is a work in which we try to think through the multiple velocities and multiple rhythms, thus the rhythmic rhythm that we are. We have a very fundamental rhythm. The doctors take stethoscope to figure out the rhythm is blocking or not, but still the rhythm is important. That rhythm in relationship to the stormy rhythm that our body is. Our bodies are extremely stormy rhythms, and that relationship between affecting the world and being affected is what this work tries to think. And yesterday, one of the mediators asked me, what were you all thinking before this work? But I think one of the most honest answer is, if we were thinking very clearly, the work wouldn't have emerged. This work is a bit emerges from the intersection of something that we could not think through, but we knew was there. So that's the intersection. And this is a series of backgrounds to that process of trying to figure out something which is extremely personal, but which is actually completely shareable with everyone in the world. Thank you for that. Yeah. I wanted to read this poem, but I thought I will let it go. This was on war and because this is one immortal that haunts our landscape in India. It's called Ashwatthama, but I thought I will let it go here. So.
Thank you, Jubesh. This really becomes a kind of backdrop to the work Something Rare to Lose, without a question mark, in the Biennale, in the last gallery called The Forest of Echoes. And the idea for this last kind of movement of the Biennale exhibition was to think about the density of forests, which are a density of many ecosystems. It's never just one ecosystem. And these jostling ecosystems that form forests then also create a whole ecosystem of echoes. Echoes of crickets, echoes of all kinds of other creatures. And when you have a chorus of echoes, what happens? So there's a hall of chants somewhere in the middle of the Biennale exhibition, and we were thinking of different kinds of densities that come together. So with Something Rare to Lose that the Raqs Media Collective presented in this Biennale, I think a central question that remained with us was, who cares for the caregiver? We've often been confronted, especially after COVID, with a situation or some kind of mishap sometimes, where the person in the bed is the subject of attention, but then there's a whole kind of ecology, since we've seen an ecology of the body and how integrated it is with the environment around us, but it's also an affective ecosystem of people caring for one another and the vulnerabilities that come with it. I wanted to kind of share an observation, but because we're limited with time and we have a performance to go to, I want to just open it up already to the audience before we maybe take my question. I'm happy to sacrifice my question if there are other questions from the audience. If you haven't seen the work, I'd urge you to go see it at some point, and if you haven't, but you've attended this presentation, please feel free to ask Jubesh. If nothing, then I'll go in. Anything? Yes.
It's maybe a bit specific. Thank you so much, by the way. It was a very, very nice presentation and discovery of your work. And you talked about this carpet, which is also a tier. And there's another carpet in the exhibition. And since you're a collective of, not a collective of dance, but maybe a collective of media, but also of art, how did the carpet come in your practice?
Came with flying carpet, basically. So once we bought a carpet, it was a very nice Persian carpet, and we said we will write flying on it. Then it became quite fun because we started doing all kinds of things with objects because of that. So it came as two things. One is that this whole idea that the carpet is portable, it moves. So that idea. And the second is there was one short essay we wrote once, not an essay, almost a paragraph, which was called The Blue Carpet. The idea was that in Shanghai we had the exhibition and people, so people would come into the hotel and we had this blue carpet and a lot of chairs and everything that people would sit, and we would be sitting all through the night, and people would sing, translate each other's song, and then the hotel removed all the chairs, everything, because they didn't like us sitting there. So it became just a plain blue carpet. And it became more enticing, and more people started joining in. So this idea that this portability and the ease of invitation to a carpet started exciting us. And then we did a work when a conversation between Ibn Sina and Al-Biruni was staged in a carpet, and with the idea that the carpet is the conversation that actually can travel. It is not a historical conversation locked in one space, but a conversation that can move. So we wanted a simple gesture, the portability of the conversation, not the historical accuracy or the historical embedding of it. So these are the certain ways in which this carpet keeps on appearing. In this, it is dwelling, the carpet. If you look at it carefully, it is an image of a dwelling. If you see from satellite, a lot of dwellings in this region, in the little away from the cities, comes like this, in this form. So it is a kind of a simple, portable dwelling that we found as an image to hold the bed, in this case. And in the tier case, we wanted to make nice something that you keep on your side. So it's a kind of a memory aid of fundamental that to yourself. They are differently placed. The carpets keep on appearing differently. So, but it started with the flying carpet, and I know it's 2013.
Something that informed the Biennale and the exhibition in a big way was this idea of arenas. So we had quite a few commissions that were staged as arenas across both indoor and outdoor spaces. K. Fatah's project is one of the arenas. Rohini Devasha's project is one of the arenas within the gallery spaces. But a lot of the outdoor commissions you see are also arenas. And we were interested in artworks that become spaces rather than objects in spaces. But then it's not just enough to say, an installation too is a space which an artwork basically takes the form of, right? So what we got more and more interested in is how does research kind of become manifest in this, and how can an arena or a new commission of an artwork bring an interesting relationship between the dormant and the manifest. And so you'll notice in the Biennale, despite a lot of our curatorial team members' interest in research, there's not a single archive. There's only literally one instance where documents from an archive are put very consciously, literally in the middle of the whole Biennale exhibition corridors of Sarkar Pratik's work. And this was kind of a conscious choice that we have to probably start thinking of the past, present, the evidence, the inference, all of these things in a very different way. And arenas become an interesting place where artists were invited to do very deep research, but not necessarily presented archivally. So what does it mean to create a space where the dormant and the manifest become somewhat interchangeable? And this carpet idea was one of those kind of motifs in the beginning, which we'll talk about actually in the closing panel. There's also a very interesting thing about emotional or affective register in the work, but again, let me hold my question and any other questions in the audience. So may I? Okay. You know, I'm going to ask a very simplistic, maybe even a problematic question. There's a way that a lot of Raqs Media Collective's works are read through a very cerebral approach. You know, a lot of amazing, interesting, poetic ideas come swirling together. And so you see artworks that kind of touch on a sensation of thought. So it's not just thought as a cerebral conceptual thing up in the air, but there's a sensoria of thought itself, of thinking itself. It creates tingly experiences. Thinking is not just in the brain, there's a sensation of thinking itself, right? But then this work is the first one, maybe I've not seen enough works of yours, but this one was really something that pulls on your emotional strings. And I say this because there were moments when I was giving tours early on before I actually sat in that chair where I was describing the work very differently. But there was one day on a quiet kind of afternoon when I wasn't giving a tour, and I sat in that chair that's next to the bed, and you see the slow breathing of the mattress and this very fragile pair of lungs inside this jar that are also moving up and down. And it takes you immediately to some experience or the other where you know that you've been around someone who's literally holding on to their last breath maybe. And it was something very, very emotionally, I mean, we've probably all been through it, and it's even difficult talking about it, but there was something that really pulls at an emotional kind of register, and it's never happened to me with any other Raqs's work. Was it conscious?
I'm happy that you're saying that because I think I also am surprised. The reason is very simple, you know, like there are certain works that comes to you that without knowing to you. In this, you know, one of the things with emotion is that if you're attendant to a person who is ill or dying or anything, you will realize that the emotions after some time exhaust you. So you cannot almost speak your emotion. You cannot even breathe your emotion. It exhausts the very ground in which you are actually attending. So this fundamental silence and some kind of an unthinkable state, where the language fails you. You are attending, but you are kind of getting exhausted by that attending. So that relationship is very important, that you can visit it. In a way, this work is very analytical. We are trying to visit a space, but that space is kind of devoid of language as of now. So everybody has it, but it doesn't speak the language. But what we try to do is try to enter that space. And it is a space that doesn't leave you with very great sense. It can leave you distressed, it can leave you numb, it can leave you joyful, it can leave you... So it is a very indeterminate space. So the work, you can say, it becomes a big space for you to experience that indeterminacy. And that indeterminacy is also personal, but indeterminacy can be shared. So in a way, it is not one person's work. So it is, in our studio, everyone has a different way of, even the pressure pump it took, like how it will breathe. Now everybody had their, so everybody had their logic to the breathing. Even pace, when we were installing... Pace of breathing. Yeah, pace of breathing, the rhythm. Even when we were installing, there was a whole discussion with the whole crew who were installing, electrician, carpenter, everyone, on the rhythm of the breathing. So it is something that everybody knows very personally, but it's very difficult to figure out in distance. So that's, I think, so in a way, I'm happy that you say that you didn't find it in other works, but it is good. Now you find it now, maybe. And some people have told, very problematic thing is that as artists, I had critique people who say that you guys have become too poetic and lost analysis. I have a critique 10 years back in a public forum from a very important person. And then suddenly we have this critique, you have lost complete your emotional structure was never there, it's come back. So, or it is now apparent. So this is not in our hand, that is all I'm saying. It is something that is that is being made continuously. We are not in control of it. It looks controlled, but we are not in control of it. So.
No, that's true. There is something about, because legibility keeps coming up, legibility of time, the legibility of experiences, but this indeterminate legibility of oneself or one's body and the other's body, I think, is quite powerful.
Yeah, it's very delicate and difficult space.
And in the Biennale, in this space where Raqs's work is, it's alongside Abdul Karim Qasim's work, it's alongside Merve Ertufan's work,
the companion
Lulwa Yahya's work. And we were really looking at thresholds of visibility, of how much we are even able to visualize ourselves when seen through, say, an MRI or aphasia when you're losing language. How does one become legible to oneself when one is losing that legibility? Some of which you'll experience when we give you tours. There's Monal Jadir, who's on the curatorial team, who'll be giving some of the tours tomorrow and day after. So we hope you'll join this. I'm going to end this discussion now, unfortunately, because we have a performance coming up of Nancy Munir next door. Thank you very much, Abish, and thank you all for joining.
Thank you all. Thank you all.